press TV, I think. Oh, can you see something? Nice! See, it's really not that hard to set it up. Can you do the camera?
I really tempted just to lob this up there.
Yeah, make it oh! You could have put the computer with that.
What, just hanging around? No. Is that a problem? Cheers. Back pocket. No. No. It's right. You're swiping card. No, I've never actually used it, so it's fine. I've not even got an account. Thanks, man. Do you want to keep the tweet wall in the stream? Do we keep the tweet wall in the stream, like, in terms of like? We did last time, just kind of zoomed out so that everyone. No, I wasn't in that far. I want to see the people. You're telling me about 10 minutes late. What do you think it's now? I know, it's not very live, is it?
Hello,
Hello. Good, yeah. You want me to zoom out more? It's like 5 minutes. Where do you want me? Do you want it more or less? What are the things? It happened. Did you not enjoy Claire at Mac? I didn't see her. You didn't even get to see Claire? No, we got to like 9:30. Yeah, I had something before we got home. We were all starving. Yeah. Did they just leave as soon as they... Yeah. Did what? We can't do anything. Just head of SAT's fine. Head of tech, I don't know. Are you happy with that? I don't really think it's good. How to bake well, there's just no pleasing some people, is there? What, to not please people? Oh, he's got patronising as well, now, Jenny. Yeah. Wait, was that pop on the wall yesterday? No, the photos were missing. Oh, this is the cave, alright? Yeah. Oh, there's the picture I took.
Where does this plug in here?
To see where the mic is plugged in.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
it's just the whole room. That's not good. Chris? Can I stop? Sweet. The other one's not turned on, I don't think, or the receiver, wherever it is.
Checking, is it actually on?
No, because it's not coming out of the speakers either.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's not powered on, that's why. I'm assuming it's powered on.
That is on mic, isn't it? Yeah, it is. I don't believe we own it. Yeah, that is on mic.
Okay, that's why it's... Is it... Because Lisa's mic's on my bag.
Can we own this?
Oh, we own Lisa, so I assume so.
No, but is this on mic or is it just the SRC mic?
I mean, it's in Lisa.
Yeah, no, we're here.
little bit at the tail end of a very busy couple of days, but I'm okay. Yeah, were you at the hustings last year?
I was like watching everybody going along on social media. Sorry? That was like my first time in a car with the building I didn't realise existed, so it was very new. But I can't believe how quickly it's gone.
It goes very quickly.
I'm quite nervous about live tweeting actually. I don't know, I was like thinking about it, like this is actually more scary than live tweeting the meeting. Hopefully it's okay.
I know.
Whoever did it last night did a really good job.
Right, okay. Flora, would it be possible to get the tweet wall on the laptop? Yeah, and just the desk PC, if that's okay.
This is much better than the one that we had yesterday. I didn't realize how good this was. Yeah, this might have to be a bit of like a jazzy audio-visual experience because I can't get the same colours as the
Oh, it's just from the presentation,
yeah.
Well, I threw it for a reasonable time.
Have you used this one before? It seems a lot better than yesterday's. It doesn't seem to be working on this laptop for whatever reason. I used this one earlier. I came in and Mario already set it up. But like, huge mystery from this whole thing has been Gossip Girl person. Yesterday, that was I was trying to get distracted, but that was the mystery.
Yeah.
Amir wanted it on the other screen, so who knows? We can't make it
was
work.
really you were a step up.
Mari, can't make it work. I can't make it work. We don't know how to make it work. Because when you press forward, it doesn't do anything.
It seemed to work this way.
We did that and there's one.
We're not just put it on the screen, like, does that really affect anyone's life choices? Just say it doesn't work and then change it back. Like, can you not just put it onto that laptop?
Where's the Look, the USB drive on somewhere. Oh, good. Mari's going to need to do that again. Alright, we can't make it work on the other one, so you're going to have it the other way. Live with it. Live with it.
Is it sweet roll with a
Fruit roll doesn't work on the laptop. Yeah. Keyboard is there.
It would just be too much for
right. Oh no, whoever did it last night did a really good job. Like, I was trying not to look at it because I was meant to be working, but it was this Gossip Girl person. Who is that? A mystery, but yeah, that should be it. I think makeup mystery. Yeah, so when you got any of the other stuff. That's much better than the other one.
Excellent. So anyone can actually read the thing that we do? Anyway, we can read it.
So good evening everyone. So thank you very much for coming along this evening. Some of you I can see in the audience were here last night, so thank you for going the whole mile or multiple miles in time. Yes, so tonight we are going to be hearing from candidates that are running for SRC executive positions next year in our sabbatical hustings. So again, as you'll all be aware, these individuals will sit on the executive of the SRC next year and will be responsible for representation, student representation right up to the highest levels within the university and beyond. So these will be for full-time paid members of the Student Council, and again they will be here to represent the wider student body. So there's a couple of, just a bit of housekeeping to start off this evening. So obviously we have our tweet wall, as you can see, and I would encourage you all, if you do have any questions or observations, fun observations or otherwise more serious, please do tweet us in. The hashtag is GUSRC Elections 17, and of course you can check out the manifestos of candidates on the SRC website if there's any points that you want to check or anything that you want to question a candidate on around their manifesto. Candidates this evening will each have 3 minutes to outline what they hope to achieve over the next year if they're successful in their campaigns. I know from speaking to some of the candidates there'll be manifesto points and other points, and of course you can ask a candidate any question pertaining to their role that they're wishing to pursue. And one last just little item, I had a discussion with our current environmental officer, and I just want to express to all candidates running, and again, if there's anyone here running from other student bodies or whatever, you can take this on as a point as well, just to be mindful when you are campaigning and postering, effectively over the next couple of days. Of course, we do appreciate, more conventional materials include things like flyers and posters, but again, you do have a time limit to take them down, so just ensure that there's no litter on campus, ensure that everything's taken down and, if possible, recycled. And of course, we would say do not be excessive when you're purchasing any materials, because ultimately it's waste, and we do want to have green campaigns as far as possible. So, to get on to what you all came here for this evening, we're going to be hearing from our first candidate this evening, a position quite close to my own heart, for Vice President of Student Activities. So can you please all give a warm welcome to our sole candidate, Pratasha Karyapia. And I'll just briefly say, so each candidate will have 3 minutes to speak, and when you have 1 minute left, I'll give you a little. So, yeah, good luck, Pratasha.
Can I move the mic closer to me? How do I do that? Oh, it's on. Sweet. Okay. Hi, my name is Pratasha Karyappa, and I'm running for the position of Vice President of Student Activities. I believe that I have the skills and knowledge required for the role, and as a current Charities, Clubs and Societies officer, I've been involved in the Raise and Give Committee, Cross-Campus Fundraising Committee, and I've also dealt with Club and Society affiliations. I will include more daytime events during Freshers Week by working in collaboration with clubs and societies. The coffee crawl hosted during Refreshers Week allowed the coffee club to showcase themselves, and also showed an increase in engagement between students and the club. By doing so, daytime events will be inclusive of all students, including non-traditional ones, and will allow students to enjoy their first introduction to university life outside their academics. I want to increase the input of the Charities, Clubs and Societies officer during Freshers Week. Their job in council is to represent clubs and societies. However, the first point of contact that these clubs have at the moment is the Vice President of Student Activities. And so, if they were introduced to the Charities, Clubs and Societies officer earlier on, it will give them the chance to establish a better working relationship for the rest of the year. Additionally, it will give them the insight into the organisation of Freshers Week, and if they wish to run for the position of Vice President of Student Activities in the next election, they will benefit first-hand from the experience. I will also set up a volunteer team at the start of the year to ensure that all SRC events have assistants, and will do so by advertising a stall during Freshers Week, as well as online. This way, new students as well as continuing students have the chance to get involved with the SRC, interact with other students and learn new things about the SRC in the process. Website developments. The idea of including an events calendar has been a point that many candidates have included in the past without much success, and is one I would like to bring forward once more. I am currently looking to see how other universities have structured theirs to gain an idea of what works well and what doesn't. Many other universities use these calendars as a method of communicating the different workshops, talks and club and society events to students. I've contacted members from St Andrews, Glasgow Cali, Strathclyde, Dundee and Edinburgh Uni to find out how they manage their events calendar, how frequently they update it and what the process of adding events to their timeline is. After collating this research, I will sit down and analyse how best to go about this process. I will continue the Raising and Giving Committee as well as the Cross-Campus Fundraising Committee, as both have proven to be successful methods of fundraising over the past year. I will help promote the facilities offered by the SRC by organising hall crawls within the first couple of weeks of university. The hall crawl was introduced at the start of second semester this year by members of council and is where we go to different student halls, tell new students about the incentives that are run by the SRC and have a Q&A session. This will no doubt be extended to non-traditional students in the form of an information session about the SRC that will be hosted during Freshers Week. I'll work closely with the other sabbatical officers throughout the year to ensure that students enjoy their time at university and be supportive of my peers. I'm friendly, approachable and will give it my all throughout the upcoming year to make sure that I am successful within my role. Thank you for listening and I hope I have your vote this Wednesday and Thursday.
So thank you very much, Natasha. Very prompt as well. Okay, so I think we'll start off by taking some questions from the audience. So can I have a show of hands for any questions? Go to Kate.
Hello. So apart from the day events that we do during Freshers Week, how do you plan to make Freshers Week as inclusive as possible?
I will work closely with the vice presidents, the other vice presidents of student support, and work as well with the other representatives around campus, such as postgraduate conveners, the international officer, and make sure that we cater to all students and their needs.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Go to Nathan.
Hi there. Mary Harris, who's just here, introduced something that when societies become part of the SRC, when they affiliate with the SRC, at their AGM they have to show their accounts if a member asks. That helps them be more accountable for the kind of finance that they do. Do you think that this is enough? Do you think there should be more, especially in light of things like fashion shows and other societies spending an extortionate amount of money?
I think it's down to the clubs and societies how they spend their own money, to be honest, because they are separate from us. But in terms of the funding, we only deal with the grant loans and applications. So when we are reviewing grant loans, say they want to borrow money for like funding for room hire, we don't actually do that, but say they wanted to hire money for travelling costs, we look at their accounts to see how they managed to spend their money, whether they have enough funding, what kind of fundraising they've done, and then go from there. So that's all. My knowledge of funding so far has only been with grant allocations and loans, but apart from that, I don't really know much about the subject, to be honest. But I can always look into it and then get back to you.
Okay, so do we have any other questions? Go to Flynn. Oh, sorry about it.
Hello. Do you have any specific ideas for how to get postgraduate students more involved during Freshers Week?
Yeah, so I would like to work really closely with the postgraduate conveners the past year, over the upcoming year. I think the Gilchrist is such a good way to advertise on campus, having posters, flyers, information sessions. This year we hosted the RAG pub quiz in the Gilchrist, which had a lot of engagement with postgraduate students. So I think it's really useful to open up things for postgraduates as well as other students.
Okay, I think Mary's got a question. I'm sure you know, but for anyone who doesn't know, Mary is the current Vice President of Student Activities.
Okay, so you talk a bit about the events calendar. It's something obviously I was interested in when I first came into the role, but it's something that is notorious for failing. It doesn't work. A sabbatical officer brings it in and it fails ultimately. The university now is thinking about bringing in its own events calendar, something that we would utilise. How do you propose to create a better calendar that actually students will use and that's sustainable? We don't want to create something that just fails ultimately again.
I think it's all down to research at the moment. I don't think there's a reason why Glasgow University can't have an events calendar when other universities can run theirs so successfully. That's why I've emailed so many different universities right now to find out why theirs has been so sustainable, how they update their events so frequently, and how, like, who actually adds it, like who's the administrative staff behind it as well. So I think it's all down to research, and once I gather all that together, that's how I can move forward with it and see, and also coordinate with the IT coordinator as well.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the audience? Go to Chloe.
How do you plan to utilise the campus extension to help promote and help clubs and societies grow? Like, for example, at the moment, the theatre building has a working theatre in it that's never utilised by any theatre societies because it doesn't have a performance licence. Is this something you'd want to look into? And are there any other examples you can give me?
Yeah, I could definitely look more into that. I'm not in the Campus Development Society, but I can always collaborate with them to see what the new spaces are going to include. But I also think the new campus will leave more room for club and society bookings, because I know that's a big issue, is room bookings. There's never enough space. So I think it would be really good to have the additional space for clubs and societies to showcase their talks and conferences and other events as well.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? No? Okay, we've got a couple from Twitter. So from Hussein El Ajuz, what change would you bring next year, something that has not been implemented this year?
I think the volunteer team is something that's never been done before. I think that would be really good. Over the past year, it's been really hard to kind of get a lot of volunteers that haven't been freshers helpers, because once you come back, once you start university, you're automatically really busy. I think opening it up to all students would be a really good way for new students as well as continuing students to get involved, and I just think it would be something that is sustainable in the future as well, and ensure that people are always at the events.
Okay, and we have another question from Twitter from favourite friend, Hugs and Kisses Gossip Girl. So, using social media to promote Freshers Week has been unsuccessful in the past. What other steps would you take to promote?
I think that's one of my aims, is to work more closely with clubs and societies. So I think you have that additional engagement, and you have the additional manpower as well to promote on campus, whether it's through flyers, through freshers helpers. I think it's also down to the freshers helpers to tell students about their past experiences and how to get involved. That's what one of the main incentives of the freshers helper is, to engage with students. And I think by doing so, we can promote more of these events on campus, is just to talk to them more and engage and tell them about our past experiences.
Okay. Is there any other questions in the audience? No? Okay, I've got a question. So, you've sat on the Clubs and Societies Committee this year, and as you know, there is obviously a limited budget for all clubs and societies throughout the year. So if a society was to come to you and said they wanted to make a grant application for £5,000 for an event, what other sources would you signpost them to if they wanted to raise that amount of money?
So at the moment, we have a cap of anything over £200. We have to host a grant meeting with clubs and societies. So what we do is we review the applications and see what they're actually applying for, prioritise what we could give them funding for and what we don't need to. We also introduce them to the Advice Centre if they want any financial assistance, so they can actually find out how to go about fundraising, and the volunteering service as well. They can get involved and find out what other incentives are there. But I think fundraising is a huge point, and just need to keep pushing for that, really.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Mary's got
One more, sorry.
one more question.
Okay, so strategic plan question. According to our strategic plan, what is our aim in terms of numbers to have in student involvement for clubs and societies by the end of 2018?
I was actually looking at the strategic plan today, but I can't really remember the numbers, to be honest.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Patasha. Thank you. So, we're almost halfway through already. Okay, so moving on to our next category this evening, and we'll be hearing from candidates running for the position of Vice President of Education. So can you please all give a warm welcome to Ali, Hannah May and Jenny. I have also been updated that due to an emergency, Ali has been unable to make it this evening. But again, if you want to find out further information regarding his campaign, you can check out his manifesto or his Facebook page.
Suppose I'll go first. Hi, I'm Jenny Benson, and I'd actually like to start with a little story. So back in September, I was sitting in my first meeting as undergrad arts convener on the SRC, and I was the only student member, and I barely knew any of the staff members around me, and it was so intimidating. But I remember leaving that meeting so much more empowered and excited for the year ahead, because I'd managed to express what I thought students would want to express and managed to start to build relationships with staff. And after that, I got more and more involved in the SRC. I was asked to take part in the Master of Arts review, where we are trying to make the arts degree better for students. I wrote a report alongside college school reps based on feedback that we got from class reps. I started to build relationships with staff. I contributed to meetings at all levels of the university. And after the first semester, I was dead set that I was going to do VPN and I was going to contribute a lot to this role, and I knew that I'd be great at it. And then my family took me to Australia, and I realised that the sun is in other parts of the world. But it didn't matter. I came back to Glasgow, and after my first few meetings, I realised that I really, really just wanted to do this role, and I knew that I could contribute to it. So I want to talk a bit about what I'd like to do. It's in my manifesto, obviously, but I want to look at the class rep role and build on the work that's already been done for that. I'd like to improve training. I'd like to split training by college. I think that would be an effective way of sharing good and bad practice in class reps at college level. I'd also like to run workshops and conferences for staff and students for them to each share good and bad practice and gain a better understanding of what each wants from teaching, from assessment, from feedback, all these things. I also want to continue Kate's work on the feedback portal so that students have all their feedback in one place, which is very important. I want to run a book fair in Freshers Week so that students can get ahead and get their books for the academic year. And I'd also like to see the SRC run campaigns on issues that are important to students, continuing issues like dictionaries for international students and exams, early exam timetable release, and bigger things like tuition fee rises and the effects of Brexit and things like that. And additionally, with the campus redevelopment, I would like to make sure that the valuable student degree is at the forefront and that rising student populations don't affect the students' current degrees' academic kind of progress. And anyone who knows me knows that I am passionate about this university, about students, and about the SRC, and I am a motivated, passionate, hard-working candidate, and I know that I am the best candidate for the job, and I will bring a lot to this job, so please vote for me. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Hannah. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience in the SRC and also about my manifesto, kind of what I have to offer the role. So I've been on the council last year as a humanities representative. I first got to know the SRC through being a freshers helper this year, and it was really, really great. I've learned kind of a lot about all the kind of things the SRC has to offer, like the advice centre. I didn't even know they had dissertations bound, so I learned a lot in Freshers Week, so it was good. Since then, I've been obviously on the SRC as the humanities representative. So I've sat on learning and teaching committees as a student voice. I've sat on academic forum with other academic representatives trying to solve cross-campus problems to do with assessment and feedback. So I feel this experience has kind of equipped me with what I need to go forward and do this role justice if I'm elected. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my manifesto. So in my manifesto is a 24-hour study space, which I think people are like, whoa, when I say that. But actually
it's actually very viable. I've actually done a lot of research about it. I've looked at Strathclyde and Cali, who both have 24-hour study spaces on campus, and I've kind of taken what they've done and I've seen if it can be transferable to Glasgow, and I think it can be. I've spoken to Susan Ashworth, who's the head librarian at Glasgow University Library, and she says it's definitely something she's willing to discuss, and I've looked at Strathclyde, who do it over exam periods, and I've talked to students there, so I think it would be a really interesting thing to pilot at Glasgow, especially over exam periods. I think it's something that students would really, really benefit from, especially students who work strange hours and things like that, and students who like to study at night. So that's one of my main manifesto things. Again, my next manifesto point is expanded use of lecture recording, which I think is always kind of said by VP Educations, but I think it's time we tackle this problem, because I think it's something that students really, really need, especially students who suffer from mental health problems, especially for students whose first language isn't English as well. It would mean they could stop the lecture and kind of go away and look up definitions and stuff. But I think the most important thing with this is we show why students want it and we show why it's so important for students, because I think if we establish this, then it will definitely be something that staff will be willing to kind of take on board, and I think it's so important to reinforce this, especially before the campus development, so that all the facilities moving forward are equipped with this technology. And another main thing that I really want to focus on is exam feedback. I think right now it's so hard for students to get this feedback, and I want to make kind of an easier route for students to get this feedback. So right now, say if a student gets a C in an exam, it's really hard for them to find out why. I think the only school I've investigated that really gives good exam feedback is the business school, but that's because they have dedicated staff to this. So I'm not saying there'll be exam feedback for everyone. That's a long-term goal, I think, which hopefully I'd like to move towards. But I think kind of working and collaborating with staff and students to see a way that we could kind of make this viable in the future. And Moodle, I also think, has a lot of functions that are underused. So I think there's so many good things it does. So you can do peer review things on Moodle. There's got checklists.
Thank you very much, Hannah.
Sorry, thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we're now going to take some questions from the audience. So can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, and we'll first hear from our current Vice President of Education, Kate.
So I have 3. I have one for each of you and one for both of you, but I'll go for both of you first. So in our strategic plan, lol, it says that we will develop online class rep training by 2017, which will be during your term. What are your plans to develop online class rep training, considering we really value our face-to-face training? Edinburgh offer online training. It's not necessarily something that we want to replace our training. How are you going to encourage students to attend our training sessions and benefit from online sessions? Have you thought about this before?
I think, like Jenny said in her manifesto, student engagement with class reps is low, and I just think there's a lot of people who don't really know what the role entails, and right now a lot of class reps are just like nominated by their class. So I think what we need to deal with first is kind of bigging up the role and just kind of making students engage and want to be involved. So I think that's the starting point. But then after that, I think in terms of online, it'll be more accessible for class reps once the online training rolls out. But I think we definitely shouldn't lose that face-to-face kind of engagement with our class reps. But yeah, I definitely think it'll make it more accessible and make more people kind of want to be involved.
Okay, so with online class rep stuff, I think it's important. At the moment, there's not a good presence of class reps. I think the presence on Student Voice and stuff could be improved. We could do photos, profiles, things like real photos and profiles, things like that. I also think online for class reps, a good thing could be to have a set of resources there instead of, replacing that with the training. It's a place where class reps can go to access resources that they encountered at the training. But yeah, as Hannah said, it's face-to-face is so important, and everyone knows that. We need to make connections with class reps and instill the importance of the position in them, and I don't think you can do that all solely online. And with attendance, it is hard. I think we just need to kind of make it clear that it's imperative and it's an important role, and nothing will change unless you make the change. And I think improving the training by instilling the importance of the role and just going into more depth about the feedback loop and about past issues that have come up and how they've been dealt with would be good for that. So yeah.
Okay, do you have another question?
I'll keep the mic then. Okay, I'll start with Jenny. So, splitting class rep training by college. Considering attendance for class rep training, we think it's pretty good. They have to get it on the transcript. I fear it would drop. Would we have to hire trainers specific to each college? What do you respond to this?
I have thought about this. I understand that there could be issues with it, like attendance dropping. How I envision it, is when they sign up to do the class rep training, they sign up to 2 separate sessions. So they would have to attend 2 separate days. And I'm aware that that could cause problems, but I think maybe in the first session, in the general session, it could, we could describe how important it is that they go to the college-specific class rep training, and I only think that it will improve the position. I think it will give class reps a better understanding of the specific issues in their college, who to deal with, who to work with, who they go to with issues, everything like that. And, I think it will benefit. I think, as I said in my Glasgow Guardian interview, I think having high-quality class reps is very important. But yeah, I would need to tackle the attendance issue, and I would deal with that head-on.
Hannah, okay. If we don't get 24-hour access in the library, do you have another building in mind? And what do you take to the criticism when staff say to you that 24-hour access encourages, an unhealthy routine or lifestyle?
Yes. So basically, I don't have a specific building in mind, but in regards to your point about it being unhealthy and stuff, I very much looked into it, and I'm not advocating for people to be in the library 24 hours. That's not healthy. It's bad for your mental health. But in terms of in other ways, it's actually very good for students who kind of get anxiety, going to the library when it's completely full. It means they can kind of go at off-peak times. But yeah, I think it is a lot more viable than it sounds, and yeah, I think there's kind of negative responses, but I'm not saying go 24 hours. I'm just saying I think for other students it would be kind of a positive thing. It would relieve stress levels for some students. If you have an essay due, they wouldn't be kicked out at 2 a.m. They kind of have the time to just chill and do what they want. And from students I spoke to from Strathclyde and Cali that have the facilities, they've said it's really helped them, especially over exam time. So I think it's definitely something we'd have to pilot and see how effective it was for students and if there's a real want for a service like this, because a lot of universities all over the UK have it. And it'd be something interesting to trial at Glasgow.
Okay, so do we have any other questions from the audience? We'll go to Chris.
This kind of hits on the 24-hour access idea, but it'd be good if you could both answer. In the capital plan for the campus development, one of the buzz terms that they kept on blabbing on about is this idea of keeping students on campus and making sure that all the uni buildings didn't go dead at 5 o'clock, and ultimately giving access to students out of hours. Mm-hmm. Is that something that either of you would envisage is something you want to push for? Because say with Earth Science, we get access to the Gregory building 24 hours with our student cards, and I just wondered if you had anything in mind regarding that.
Well, obviously, because I'm going for this in my manifesto, I think it's something I'd very much champion. I think is really great because, obviously, mature students get access to out-of-hours buildings. I know my friend Liam has told me that they get out-of-hours access to the maths building, and I think it's great. I think it's great that students get that access, and I know they're rolling out new student cards which give you access to all areas. So they're kind of working on changing locks and stuff. So I talked to the IT officer when he came into council to talk about that, and he said, yeah, it would be useful to get into a 24-hour thing. So it's definitely something I think I'd push for, and I think it's very useful to students, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely push for it. I think it's important for students to have access to facilities 24/7. I don't think that it will create an environment where students feel they have to be on campus all the time, or I hope it wouldn't, and I think we'd need to support that we're not asking students to be on 24/7. It's an alternative, or it's an addition at stressful times. It's not something to, stay 24 hours. But yeah, I do support it.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the audience?
I'll do one.
Okay, we'll take one more from Kate.
Okay. Hannah, you talk about lecture recording policy and wanting to roll it out. Since I've been at university, it's been in every manifesto of every VP education, and there's been some great VP educations that have done some great work. How are you different from them, and how will you actually make the difference?
Good question, Mary. Yeah, definitely. I do agree. It's in every manifesto ever. But I do think I think that's what I was saying earlier, that I think what we need to do is kind of, my idea, it's just my idea, is kind of to hand out surveys and kind of figure out why students want this and why it's so important. And I definitely, from the welfare angle, I think it's so important to kind of like, it's not just because students are lazy, do you know what I mean? It's because a lot of students do suffer with mental health issues. A lot of students do need this. So I think what we need to do is start with kind of, I've talked to John McGuire, who's the e-learning and e-learning innovation officer for College of the Arts. And it's something he's willing to work with me on to do. But yeah, I think kind of collate a report and kind of circulate it around staff, being like, this is why students need it. But I just think I need to just keep pushing for it. And I think Kate's had a lot of successes recently in terms of her lecture recording, because on Wednesday afternoons, basically, she's made it so the central timetabling, when anyone tries to put a class on a Wednesday afternoon, that they either have to record that lecture or change, they have another lecture time, I think. So that's very successful. So if I can just make little inroads like this, it'll make all the difference in the future. And I think if we kind of push home now why it's so important to have lectures recorded, hopefully in the campus development, it'll be something that'll be really considered as well. But yeah, thanks for your question.
Okay, one more from Kate.
Teaching Excellence Framework. So, you have monthly meetings with Frank Coton, the Vice Principal for Kind of Learning and Teaching, and Jack Aitken, who is the Director of the Senate Office, and he's leading the Universities UK Working Group on behalf of Glasgow University on this. How will you ensure that that they listen to you on this, and how will you make sure that you're kind of up to date and well informed on this?
You like the Teaching Excellence Framework, don't you, Kate? So basically, I've kind of like, I know your stance on this, Kate, and that you think it's very fee-driven. So I take a very similar stance. I do agree, and I agree that Scotland have their own version of it, the quality enhancement framework, and that's currently working. So I think if we just keep pushing this stance that it's not something that's going to work for Glasgow University right now, I just keep pushing that.
Yeah, I think in terms of getting your voice heard, all you can do is make your voice heard. Really, in meetings, make sure that they're aware that the SRC Council, yourself, don't support this and don't think it's the right direction for Glasgow University. And keeping up to date, I mean, we'll have to keep updating the job anyway with the Time to Higher Education website and things like that. Just keeping up to date on news, I think.
Okay. Any further questions from the audience? No? Okay. There's a couple from Twitter. So, from SRC Awareness, how do the candidates plan to raise awareness of efforts to improve feedback?
Sorry?
How do candidates plan to raise awareness of efforts to improve feedback? Often small steps are not visible.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So how do the candidates plan to raise awareness of efforts to improve feedback? Often small steps are not visible.
Raise awareness of efforts. I mean, visibility on all of council members is quite poor anyway at the moment. I think we need to increase engagement with the SRC in general, and make, council members more visible on campus, which has been done with the academic officers' posters being put around campus. That's great. And I think we just need to make, our personas more visible and what we're doing more visible. Things like sending out update emails, having a blog on Student Voice, little things like that, I think would be good ways of communication, campus e-news with semesterly updates, things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Jenny's saying. I think it's just a case of communication again, something which we're kind of working on since the strategic plan was written. It's in there. The SRC needs to work on its communication. And unfortunately, I think the role of a lot of things to do with feedback with VP education are long term. But like I said, I think all we can do is just communicate the kind of small inroads and the small successes of the things we do. And we can, like Jenny said, do that through things like blogs and online. But yeah, definitely think we need to push in terms of communication with the SRC. And it's something we're getting better at, definitely, with considering the success of the recent awards hosted by Mari for the Volunteering Clubs and Society Awards was really good. And Kate's doing really well with the SDAs. So I think we just need to keep pushing communication and just, yeah.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for each of you from Twitter. So Jenny, you mentioned you want to make the class rep training even longer, but class reps already find it too long. What's your opinion on this?
I spoke a little bit in my Guardian interview about this. I think the thing is with class reps is that they are quite successful, but we need more engaged class reps. And I don't think that longer training will have a negative effect on their engagement. I only think that it will instill the importance of the role into them more. They have more ideas on good and bad practice that have happened. I genuinely feel that it will be a positive thing. And you know, if it deters people from applying for the class rep role, which I don't believe it will, because I don't think it will, then you know we can look at moving it back. But I think it would be good to test a longer class rep training.
Okay, and for you, Hannah, you did not address the late publication of the exam timetable in your manifesto. Why?
Yeah, I kind of tackled this question in my Guardian interview as well. But I do think it's something that's very, very important. But like I said in my Guardian interview, I think it's kind of a long-term thing that each VP Ed will kind of continue picking up and pushing for. We'll keep pushing for it to be published earlier. But like I said, it is very hard to coordinate all the subjects. Do you know what I mean? They try their very best, I think. But I just think it's something that all I can do is just say that I'm going to continue most of the work that Kate's doing, because I really agree with a lot of the stuff she's done this year. But yeah, I'll keep pushing for it if I'm elected, and hopefully we can keep it moving it back, especially for students who kind of live abroad and stuff. It's very, very important that that they know when exams are and stuff quite early so they can book flights. So I definitely agree it's an important thing.
Okay, and from Hugs and Kisses Gossip Bureau, can you comment on how Kate performed in her role and what you would do differently?
Like I've just said, I think Kate's done a fantastic job. I've enjoyed working with her on Academic Forum. Her direction's been really great. I've really enjoyed all of our workshops on assessment and feedback. I've really enjoyed working with all the other reps. And like I said, I think she's definitely done so well with the STAs and all the promotion for that as well. Trying to think of anything I can be critical of. Yeah, I guess she had lecture recording in her manifesto, but she has done some things to kind of make that better as well. So hopefully I can make some changes too.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kate's done a great job, and it's been a pleasure to work under her and take her position from last year, not this year. Yeah, I think she's done a great job. She's been a great line manager. Academic Forum has been very, very successful, and she's always open to new ideas that I've brought up. I really, honestly don't know what to say about criticise. I really don't know, to be honest. I can't really. I think I would push more for the political campaigns, like with the tuition fee rising that happened, that you weren't consulted about. You all wrote a letter, but I feel like we could have done more. We could have gone to London and done the protesting, and I think that should have been pushed a little bit more. That was all. I'd be more political, but that's not the VP Education remit. So it's just
I've not really spoke to you about this, so I don't know, but I've not heard loads about the feedback kind of being collated. I'm not really sure how much has been done towards that and how much would be kind of taken over to next year. So that's the only thing I can be critical of. It's just not been very well communicated.
Okay, so one of the priorities in the SRC strategic plan is that we will seek to address inconsistencies around postgraduate representation, develop and agree a joint postgraduate engagement and representation strategy with relevant university stakeholders. So again, obviously a year is a finite amount of time, but what steps would you take to increase postgraduate representation and engagement?
I've actually spoke to a couple of postgraduates who are friends of mine, and I think it's something that we really need to work on. Postgraduate engagement is always the same every year. It's not great, but I think there's things with, like, you know, people are doing research, and there's loads of different kind of schools, and there's so much going on, so it's hard to kind of engage directly with these postgraduates. But I think the most important thing we can do is just obviously like work with the postgraduate conveners. They know their remit better than anyone, and they can kind of give you a better idea of ways that they would. I think obviously the Gilchrist is a great facility, and they've held lots of really good events over Freshers Week, like the whiskey tastings and stuff. So I think keep rolling out events like that appeal to postgraduate students, and hopefully if we all work together collaboratively, we can kind of figure out some solutions to this problem, because it's definitely something I want to address if I'm elected.
Yeah, I agree with everything Hannah just said. I think postgraduate engagement is definitely a problem from what I've heard from students that I've spoken to as well. And I think it's important to work with the PG conveners. They're the first point of contact. The class reps are the first points of contact for postgrad students, so it's important to work closely with them and ensure that they are, you know, really engaging, trying to engage with their postgraduate students. And I also agree with the Gilchrist holding events, social or academic, like Bob's held a few things, the postgrad convener this year. So it's important to keep trying to get them to come along to SRC, build their knowledge of the SRC, and working with PG conveners.
Okay, and as a final question, there's been a lot of discussion tonight around assessment and feedback, which is obviously the recurring theme in the university around education. So again, the National Student Survey is currently underway. Can any of you give a percentage, to the closest percentage, what the figure was last year in overall satisfaction at the University of Glasgow? And if you know, the UK ranking.
The what?
The UK ranking and the percentage that the University of Glasgow had in overall satisfaction.
Thanks, Mayor. I've looked at the NSS so much. I could probably tell you the assessment and feedback figures. The overall satisfaction, I believe, is about mid 60%. Maybe early 70s. Maybe early 80s. No, I'm kidding. I don't know the world ranking.
Thanks, Mayor, for this. I have looked at the NSS as well. I can't pluck a figure. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I think it might be a little bit higher overall. I'm going to go 70, 75.
Okay, so for 2016, 24th in the UK and 89%.
My best.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so now moving on to our next category, and we are going to be hearing from candidates running for the position of Vice President of Student Support. So can you please all give a warm welcome to Tia, Thais and Lauren.
Hello, can you all hear me? Is that all right? Yeah. Hello, my name is Thais, and I'm running for the position of Vice President of Student Support. I'm currently the Gender Equality Officer on the SRC. If you want to read my entire manifesto, it is up online, both on the SRC website and my Facebook event. Rather than just going through all of it, I thought that this evening I would just focus on the issues surrounding training, offered to students as well as student support in general. When I personally came to university, I came from France, and it was really weird. I came here, knew nobody. It was the first time I moved into the UK, and I think I was really lucky with the fact that I did manage to join the university quite easily. I didn't find it particularly difficult to take part in all the activities, and I think that even though I'm really lucky, there's still a lot that can be done, because there are a lot of students for who it's not as easy as it was for me to come here and really decide that Glasgow is where they felt comfortable. One of the things that I've mentioned and that has been really growing recently is student-led initiatives, and particularly training. For example, the sexual violence prevention training, which was started by the SRC, Caledonian University, and the Let's Talk campaign, which, for those of you that don't know, is a group of societies here at Glasgow who really work together to sort of push for more awareness and more dealing of issues surrounding sexual violence on campus. So this training has had a very strong student influence, and it's worked really well recently. It's been delivered to quite a lot of people, quite a lot of first helpers, and it's continuing to grow. And I think it is really important to continue and offer support to such trainings, because they help offer an environment for students in which they feel comfortable. They raise awareness, they help people learn about issues that they perhaps hadn't heard of before. We have, for example, members of staff who have wanted to take part, and that's just really, really good. Now, with training comes the issue of funding, and it always does. Where do we find the money? And I think that is important to note that there is, first of all, there is money within the university. There are initiatives that are being started by the university. There's a carers fund for staff, which offers support for carers and parents to go away in conferences, and it's not been fully used, so why not expand it to students? Why not allow students to access that money, which is there and ready to be used? And there are, grants, applications. I know that Erin Ross this year got quite a lot of money for suicide prevention training to be rolled out next year. And it is important, I think, to sort of go there and make sure that just because we think that maybe we don't have access to funding for a particular initiative doesn't mean that we should be scared to go after it. I think that we really should pursue whatever we want to do. And if funding is an issue, then we need to fix that issue. We need to talk with the university, and we need to talk with people out with the university to make sure that the students do feel comfortable and they do feel like they are in an environment where staff and other students are aware of issues and able to support them as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, so I'm Lauren Shugle-McDougall, and I'd like you to elect me as your next VP Student Support. I'm not going to cover my manifesto in my speech because it's online, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about it. Instead, I want to use this time to tell you why my skills and experience, combined with my achievements so far, make me the best candidate for VP Student Support. So during my time as Disability Equality Officer, I've always sought more opportunities to represent students and influence change at all levels. This includes being elected as this year's SRC Court Assessor, and also representing students and the barriers faced by disabled students at the Scottish Parliament. I've never shied away from opportunities to hold the authorities to account when it comes to student support issues, and some of my achievements over the last year have included securing guarantees of gender-neutral toilets in every new building on the new campus, as well as more quiet and reflective space, child-friendly study space and facilities for breastfeeding, and these provisions will be written into equality and diversity design standards, so every new building will have to adhere to these. I also developed and led the SRC's first ever dedicated welfare team. So this grew from a pilot project that the age equality candidate Elliot Napier and I trialled in 2015. And this was out of a desire to encourage kind of more non-traditional students to engage with Freshers Week. So from that pilot, we then expanded it this year. And it was really to help non-traditional students to make those friendships that are a crucial support throughout university. And through this, I've proven that I not only want to improve engagement with those students who typically don't get involved with the SRC, but I've actually put those plans into action. So engagement is obviously key to understanding how to support students. Not only have I made successful efforts to engage with students, but I've also been one of those students on the outside looking in. So for the 6.5 years that I've been here at Glasgow Uni, I've only been involved with the SRC for 2 of those. Before that, my knowledge of the SRC was as vague as most students probably is, and it wasn't until I was president of LGBTQ+ that I got to learn about the SRC from an outside perspective. And it's clear that this is how most students come to learn about the SRC, so we really need to capitalise on clubs and societies. So recently I've been in contact with dozens of welfare and equality diversity focused clubs and societies, also been in contact with the Dumfries Student Association, just to ensure that the SRC is representing our students there. If elected, I'll continue to ensure that I'm consulting students directly on the issues that matter most to them. Understanding barriers to getting involved with the SRC and the reasons for lack of engagement are incredibly important in tackling these issues. But importantly, I have the experience and skills that have come from my time of working on the SRC that will really allow me to hit the ground running if I'm elected. I have have good working relationships with the university, and I know who to go to get stuff done. So to quote a popular meme, get yourself a VP student support who can do both. I have a wealth of experience from both perspectives, and will use this to ensure that I'm a VP student support who represents the wonderful diversity of all the students we have here. Thank you.
All right, hi everybody, I'm Tia Manavis and I'm obviously running to be VP Student Support. So a little bit of background about me. I've been involved with the university through a lot of different student societies that aren't necessarily within the SRC. For the past 4 years, I've been a student ambassador for the international office, working with new international students to help them learn how to engage with the university when they come here. Last year, I was president of Isabella Elder Feminist Society, which and I've spent 3 years total on board now. We double membership each year by providing an approachable and accessible way to interact with feminism. So that's a big accomplishment I'm really proud of. I also run the Let's Talk campaign, which is the campaign that started up the sexual assault initiative, or prevention initiative through the SRC. And I'm also currently sitting on the reporting and prevention board work stream, which is setting up a formal infrastructure for sexual violence on campus. So I've worked with the SRC a lot on behalf of a lot of different student groups. The overall point of my manifesto, if you go ahead and read it, it's pretty clear. I want to better student support by utilizing the huge range of talent students have here, namely through societies. When you engage with students who have experience in the area of support that you're aiming to give, services become a lot better and students feel more engaged. I think in the past, the SRC has a little bit of trouble reaching students because it aims to deal with a lot internally, not including societies with practical experience. And also rarely do we see people coming completely from outside of the SRC into a SAB position. I think this is something that I benefit a lot from because I've worked with the Let's Talk campaign and Isabella Elder with the SRC. I kind of get to see how the SRC functions in actually giving support to students. I've been a key player in organizing International Women's Week for the past 3 years, been really involved in that, and I also was the one who went to Glasgow Caledonian University to organize how the Sexual Assault Prevention Initiative would be rolled out, and it's been a huge success this past year due to the thanks of a lot of different people. At the end of the day, all of us aren't going to disagree on a lot of the issues. We all support gender-neutral bathrooms, suicide prevention initiatives, and more funding for CAPS. What I think we will differ on a lot, though, is our policy approach. My experience working not within the SRC, but alongside the SRC on behalf of a lot of different student groups grants me more perspective as a support receiver into where the issues within the SRC lie, something that I think is really difficult to see from within the SRC. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much to all candidates. So we'll now take some questions from the audience. Could I have a show of hands, please? We'll take one from Mary.
So these ones I'm asking on behalf of Erin Ross, obviously the Vice President for Student Support currently, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. So she's got a question for each of you, so I'll just start with the first one on the list. So Thais, it's been a pilot year of the Let's Talk About Sexual Violence campaign. Feedback is good, but attendance has constantly been poor. What, in your opinion, are the barriers to students attending these workshops, and how can we increase engagement with them?
I'll grab the mic. Yeah, I think it has been quite a shame, I think, that once we started opening sessions for them to be sort of dropping, the attendance has really, really dropped. I think there's two main issues. First of all is, I think, just advertisement. How do we advertise these sessions? Facebook is great, but I think that maybe we should try and target specific groups. I think I do agree with Tia on the points about how clubs and societies are really important within the university, and they're really the way for us to get in touch with the wider student population. So I think that perhaps if we really tried and focus on clubs and societies and got them to advertise within their own constituencies, is that the word I'm looking for? I'll go for constituencies. Then that could really improve the amount of people coming. I also know that, for example, one of the more recent sessions that we did, there have been some staff from accommodation services that have come along, and they have also said that they're really interested in taking part. So I think that it is important, I think, to reach maybe those few people that will bring larger groups to these sessions, and to make sure that it's not just a student who feels passionate about the issues and who wants to learn more. It really needs to be pushed to groups that will engage with the training. Yeah.
Great. Can I just ask the other two? Tia, so a lot of your ideas apply only to this particular campus in Gilmore Hill, but how will Dumfries students benefit from your manifesto?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the ideas can be applied to other campuses, and I think this is the main point in talking with any students that I don't particularly identify with. Like, I'm an international student, I work with feminist societies. Anybody that I don't work with, I just want to talk to them, because that's half the issue, I think, is that so much tries to be just dealt with as in like, oh, what do I think is going to happen? Just talking with the students that it actually affects, because I think that rarely happens. Like, in regarding Let's Talk, like if we're wanting to increase numbers for those workshops, talk to the societies. Like, we have huge reach and we can access people, so just talking to the students that the support services affect. That's what I would aim to do.
Oh, and Lauren. So the university does well at practical support for care experienced students. They have a named point of contact, accommodation, financial aid, etc., but they do less well on emotional/mental support. How will you address this?
So, like you say, the support that's provided kind of on entry is fantastic. There's extra financial support, there's extended accommodation periods for care experienced young people. But as part of the corporate parenting plan, which is it's a government policy, which means that organisations which have young people under the age of 26, they have a responsibility to look after those care experienced young people. And we need to be doing a lot more once they get here. So for me, I think, firstly, I'd look at what's worked already for other similar groups. So we have a carers network, we have a disabled students network, and we get a lot of really good feedback from these about just the general sort of social and peer support that's provided through those. So I think we need to look into creating a care experienced young person group, probably with a snazzier name. And I think the best way to do that is, at the moment, we don't really have access to contacting these students, so we would need to liaise with the named person, who's Dan Keenan in Widening Participation, and use him to really kind of make sure that we're reaching as many of these students as possible. So firstly, setting up a social and peer support group, I think, is one way to deal with it. I think the uni also need to look into pushing support at particularly difficult times. So we see that any average student experiences more stress at particular times of the year, exam times, transition times between first and second year and honours and things like that. And I think for particularly vulnerable students, we really need to be pushing at those times. So I think what Dan and his colleagues in Widening Participation perhaps need to do is look into really targeting support and signposting to relevant support services on campus at those particular times and directly contacting the students that are affected.
Okay, so do we have any more questions from the audience? Go to Flynn.
Hi. So let's say that there was a candidate nominated for rector of Glasgow University with views that weren't in line with yours and maybe the official university views on things. For example, they were transphobic. What would you guys, do you think anything should be done? And if so, what?
So obviously we are in this position because there has been a candidate who's been nominated. I'm not sure whether or not it's been accepted, but it's certainly been publicised on social media that there is a candidate who is spouting quite awful opinions. And for me, one thing I would want to look into is whether or not a rector needs to also follow the student code of conduct and the staff code of conduct, because surely there's a way that hate speech is not allowed on campus and that we can't be seen to be pushing a candidate who is, known for hate speech. I also think longer term, in the bigger picture, we need to be creating kind of an ethos on campus that shows students that that's not appropriate. So we need to be working really hard on kind of education and making sure that students know that we are a campus that kind of embraces diversity and celebrates it and doesn't comment on it in such negative ways. So long term, I'd like to see us create a kind of warmer ethos on campus that wouldn't lead to those nominations being made in the first place, but the world isn't perfect. So I think, first of all, I would be looking into kind of official procedures and ways that we could make sure that that candidate was never elected.
Yeah, I agree. I started taking notes when you were just saying all these things. Yeah, I think there is there is the issue of, that candidate has been nominated by students. Therefore, as a student body, we should be listening to the students and we should be listening to who they want to elect. At the same time, I do believe that the rector is here to represent students, and a rector whose views are going against, like Lauren said, the code of student conduct or the ideas of the student body and the ideas that we as a student body have been pushing through this university. There's a lot of great work with the LGBTQ+ society on campus. There's a lot of great work with the sexual violence prevention training on campus. There's a lot of great work with feminist societies, and I could list them all. There's quite a lot. We are quite an engaged student body, and I do think that in a way, would it be appropriate for a rector to go against all of these things that the wider student population has been fighting for, simply because a group of students have decided that, either it's a joke, in which case it's not ideal, or it's a serious candidate, in which case, like Lauren said, we need to make sure that all of those fights towards better equality on campus have a better reach, because it does mean that there are students that we're not reaching, and there are students whose views are still going against sort of a more wider and open community.
Just to keep it short, because I think we all pretty much agree on this, that it shouldn't be allowed. Yeah, I would definitely agree with they would have to abide by the code of conduct, for staff and students. One other thing I would kind of just jump off the back of that was mentioned is there are a lot of really good initiatives run, like LGBTQ Awareness Month, International Women's Week, and Taste was just saying that everybody's really engaged in it, but I think it's just a really small subject. We kind of see turnout for even elections and things. It's a few thousand people at a university with 27,000 students. So everybody who's involved is really engaged, but past that, people have no idea. So I think that it once again just comes with buzzword, engaging students that aren't already engaged in the SRC or student societies.
Okay, so we'll take a question from Kathy.
Hi, this question's for Tia. Actually, you just started to pick up on the question I was going to ask you.
Super.
So you talk a lot about engaging with student societies and everything, and obviously there's the SRC.
Yeah.
But I was wondering how you would engage or reach students that are kind of out with that, because a lot of students, non-traditional, maybe they feel disenfranchised, etc. How would you reach those students and help them, support them?
Yeah, I think definitely engaging a bit better with the non-sabbatical officers, of the welfare and equality officers, kind of just knowing our points of contact there, reaching out to students, even through class reps, lecture shout-outs, just kind of catching up with students and seeing where they're at, because there are definitely even a lot of courses that are more internationally focused or have more mature students in them. My course has loads of mature students in social and public policy. So I think engaging with non-sabbatical officers that typically don't really work with student support typically could increase our reach a bit more, literally by forcing people to listen in lecture theaters is a really easy way to reach students who aren't engaged typically.
Okay, so we'll take a question from Chris.
The environment. The environment officer falls under the line management, if you like, of student support and welfare. It's a bit of a strange one, obviously, because it's not, if you like, what a lot of people think is a traditional welfare role. Where do you see the environmental officer under your supervision? And that's to everyone.
Is it me? Is it mine? I'll have to think about it for 1 sec. Right, I've written nothing. Bear with me on this. No, I definitely think that I think it is interesting in a way that you say that environmental officer is not, or at least isn't thought of, well, I guess it's true. When you think welfare officers, maybe you wouldn't go straight for environmental officer. And I think that's perhaps because it could be seen as more of a long-term issue. No environmental officer is going to walk in and save the planet around the Glasgow Uni campus, because sadly that's not how it works. But I do think that the issues are very important, and I do think that, I know that, for example, the work that you've started, I think is really good, and working with the university to sort of build, policy to make sure that from this point, from this moment onwards, the university does think about the environment, and they do think, especially in the campus redevelopment, and they don't just sort of push it back in the background because the environment is just this issue that everyone's been talking about for a long time and people are going to still be talking about for a while to go. I think that it is important to, as in a line management point, offer the same support and work with the environmental officer in the same way that you would work with other officers. Of course, is there a constituency? Would you say there's a particular, the entire student population, perhaps? But yeah, I think it's really making sure that, we still fight for those issues because they're still important issues, and just because there may be less visible issues around campus doesn't mean that they should be ignored.
Yeah, once again, kind of with the rest of my manifesto, if something isn't my area of expertise, like the environment, I'd really like to talk with whoever the environmental officer will be, and also societies like GUEST. There's going to be a lot of fun opportunities for events to engage with students on kind of a low level. I know that GUEST holds loads of really fun events. Seeing what ideas they have, because if it's not my area of expertise, who am I the best one to say what the best way to provide student support through the environment is? And the environmental officer, I'm sure, might have some ideas about how we could collaborate. So really just talking it out with the right areas of contact.
This is one that I actually thought of about a year ago when I was kind of thinking about the structure of council and where the different officers sit. And at first I did think it was a bit odd that environmental officer sat under VP student support and not perhaps maybe VP student activities. And it wasn't until I gave it some more thought that I realised that actually it really is kind of an intersectional issue, because the environment in fact affects our health, it affects our well-being. So I think it does make sense that it falls under VP student support. I think maybe one of the reasons that it's harder to line manage is that a lot of the other equality, diversity and equal ops reps have specific champions within the university, senior members of staff. They have specific boards and committees to sit on that make it very easy to say, here's your papers, here's what you need to do, here's your constituency. But like the others have mentioned, everybody's a constituent underneath environmental officer, every single student at the university. So I think it's, for me, I would see it as, yes, line managing like everyone else, but also making sure that you are maybe thinking about kind of cross initiatives, so initiatives that focus on why the environment is important and why it maybe falls under student support. So things like campaigns that explore the impact the environment has on our health and our well-being and how we can better that at the university. So yeah, I think it is an odd one, and I have considered it before myself, but I think it's just about making sure that you speak with your environmental officer and that they are reaching as many students as possible through student societies and things like that.
Okay, we'll take a question from Mari.
Pretty much everyone, I mean Tia maybe in particular, but everyone, you've all mentioned collaboration with societies and running initiatives with them. My job role is fundamentally working with these clubs and societies. I have so many times not been able to collab with them. I open out opportunities to them, Freshers Week, Refreshers Week, different events going on. I know Thais was doing International Women's Week and she had a poor response. You seem to be relying a lot on society collaboration, but yet these societies often don't actually want to collab with us. How are you going to fix that?
So this is something that I think that I have a lot of experience in, because we want to collaborate with the SRC, but there's just a disjointed communication somehow. I think that setting up that Facebook group that has board members from every society was such a good idea. I can't believe that wasn't done sooner. So I think that coming from the experience of somebody from within societies wanting to interact with the SRC, seeing where points of communication have failed, I think that's something that would grant me a lot more experience in the future, and kind of the best modes of communication, email's not necessarily always the best one, making sure everybody has up-to-date information. So,
it is really difficult to engage with clubs and SOGs, because it is really difficult to engage with the whole students. And I know, like you mentioned, for International Women's Week, it was really difficult to get things started, and it sadly is. I think that one thing that I have realized through organizing International Women's Week is that if you start talking to a large group of people, no one's going to reply to you. No one's going to care. So I think what's really important is we need to focus. If we have an initiative and we want to use the clubs and societies to help us deliver it, or there's something that clubs and societies do that maybe we can offer them support, I think it's about a more individualistic, is that a word? I'll go for it. You know, just approach really going to the individuals themselves, the clubs and the societies. And I think what's quite interesting as well is, you know, through LGBTQ+ as well, I've been on the sort of other side of that as well, where, you know, I've been within a society trying to work with the SRC for organising LGBT+ History Month. And it felt like it was that same sort of issue where there really needs to be a sort of one-on-one interaction on these issues, because otherwise messages don't go across, people don't get back to you. So I really think that it is time-consuming and it's difficult, but I think it would be really a one-on-one type of interaction. And of course, working with the incoming VP activities to really make sure, you know, to really utilize all of those lines of communication.
Thank you. I think the targeted approach is definitely right. People ignore mass emails, and if they think that everybody's been sent the same email, they're not going to respond. And I found this myself when I've been contacting clubs and societies. If you make it personal, if you add a little touch about the club or society, why you're contacting them specifically, and why their input is valuable, I think that always helps. People like to feel valued. I think we also could utilise the kind of induction better. So when we're inducting board members for clubs and societies, which is, you know, it's a prerequisite for affiliation, so they have to come to that. I think we could utilise that a bit better to show what opportunities there could be from collaborating with the SRC. So we could show examples of best practice where clubs and societies have collaborated before and what it's done for them. So if we can maybe get some feedback from clubs and societies that are particularly engaged and find out why they do respond to us and why they do get involved, then we're probably going to find a better answer as to why the ones that don't get involved. Again, when I was president of LGBTQ+, we had a great relationship with the SRC, and to be honest, it probably came down to the fact that we got a lot of grant funding. So I think that kind of interaction, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I know that certainly before, the clubs and societies weren't actually utilising grant funding as much as they could. They didn't always know what they could apply for, how to apply for it, how to put forward applications. So maybe if we were to give a bit more information on that as well, we would get a lot more interest in the SRC, and then that would create this kind of two-way communication that would maybe make it easier to get them to collaborate with us.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the audience? No? Okay, we'll take one from Twitter then. So from Jessica Penny. So Tia, Thais and Lauren, you've all done different activist work. How will you ensure the support you provide is intersectional?
So I think probably all of us are going to have similar answers on this, because I think we probably are all on a similar page. We have to be intersectional in our work, or we are ignoring our students, and we're ignoring the fact that we don't exist in boxes. We are not just one identity. We are made up of like multiple identities. So I think for me, it comes from the fact of just recognising that people are not labelled in boxes, but it's also drawing on experience, and where you don't have experience, then going to the relevant people to make sure that you are hearing from students directly. So over my time as Disability Equality Officer, for example, I haven't just gotten involved in areas of disability. I've been a prominent member of the Carers Network. I've been really involved in listening to student carers. I'm a student carer myself, so I kind of know what the issues are, but it's very different for different people, and it's the same with all of these kind of identity and protected characteristics. Your experience is not going to be the same as the next person's. So even if your activism is in LGBTQ+, that doesn't mean that you actually speak for all of those people. So it's always about communication, and it's always about making sure that you're actually listening to the people that are coming to you. So I think, yeah, it's just make sure that you are not assuming, make sure that you're speaking to groups of students that you're looking to represent to find out what the issues actually are. And I think I've proven that I've done that, you know, quite a lot throughout my time on the SRC. Creating the welfare team during Freshers Week was very intersectional. I mean, we were aiming our events at every kind of demographic of student. I mean, particularly focused on your non-traditional students, so mature students, disabled students, student carers, home students, students who were parents. But what you end up finding is actually that there are a lot of similar issues and there's a lot of similar ground, but it is just about making sure that you're listening to students, essentially. So I don't think it's a problem if your activism is in one area. I think having those skills in the first place are transferable and will help you to engage with all of the other demographics.
All right, I think bottom line, if you are in a position of privilege, you need to amplify the voices of the people who are oppressed. Bottom line, you cannot speak for them, you speak to them, and then use what they say in your position of privilege. Like, bottom line. All of us have had loads of activist experience, like whether it's through LGBTQ or like feministy things or disability equality. And if it's not intersectional, it's not worth talking about. So like I've said, basically the entire night, talk to the students that it affects. You can't get anything done if you don't do that, and I think that's one of the big problems right now, is that everything is trying to be dealt with internally when you just talk to the students it affects.
Yeah, for sure. I think even through my time as, even considering only me working as a gender equality officer here at the SRC, I have had a chance to work, for example, on International Women's Week on women's issues. I've been working with Erin and Murdo on students who are parents. I've been working with Dylan, who's the gender and sexual diversity officer on Trans Day of Remembrance. So there is already intersectionality here. And like both Lauren and Tia said, it is everywhere. I don't like boxes, I don't like labels. And I think and I don't like them because it is this idea that if you're in one box, then by definition you can't be in another box. And I think that is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think that any of us only identify as one single thing, and I think that it is important to make sure that this intersectionality is present in everything that we do and everything that we will do. And that comes from doing, like both of them have mentioned, having conversations with all those groups, and also making sure that, we have welfare officers that will be line managing, and they will have perhaps a more direct relationship with students in their own constituencies. And I think that is important to also make sure that we maintain conversation with them to know sort of what is happening in their groups and how they, as officers, can also work together in order to support this sort of intersectionality.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So over the last few years, demand for CAPS at the university has more than doubled, and there is currently work being done to look at funding for CAPS. Again, I guess I've said to all candidates, a year is a finite amount of time, but feasibly within that time, what would you like to be done to address this, and how would you pursue that?
Yeah, so the issue of caps and money has been an issue that for as long, it's another one of those, whereas for as long as I've been involved with the SRC, you just hear it every single year. Caps this year have been prioritised in the next round of budget allocations. So hopefully, fingers crossed, they will get a little bit more money than they have in the past. Still, I don't think that will fix all the issues. I think it is important to remind the university how important the counselling and psychological services are. It's important to remind them that they're really important for a lot of students, and those students need support. And the university does have money. It's just about how to organise it. And even in the case, let's say CABS does not get any more money, does not get any more funding, and they're still really lacking the money, for lack of a better phrase. Oh, English is working well this evening. If CABS doesn't get money, I think that this should mean that we just sort of say, oh, well, CAPS doesn't have any money, so there's nothing we can do. We need to make sure that we are able to find money elsewhere, like Erin did for the suicide prevention training, ask for grants, try and find all the areas where the money is available, or try and organise really training and support that doesn't require that same amount of funding, which maybe, if we ask for less money, then maybe the university will be more likely to allocate it to CAPS or mental health-related services.
So I think that, like Lauren and Thais, none of us are going to say, we're not going to put pressure on the university for CAPS funding. All of us are going to, fight to the death for more funding. But at this point, we also need to start looking at reasonable alternatives, because this issue isn't really going to go away. So whether that's better signposting for other services in Glasgow, or working with different universities to try promote cross-institutional events, or even just working with student societies for basic self-care, I think can cover at least some preliminary care. I know that somebody tweeted yesterday, dogs are not a replacement for CAP services. But it definitely, we can cover some bases with reasonable alternatives while we're trying to put pressure on the university for more money for CAPs.
Thank you. So one of the things I think is, so CAPs are being prioritised in the next funding cycle, but it's about how we want to lobby the university to use that money. So having more counsellors is great, and there obviously is a need for it, but there's also a need for more sustainable projects that are going to continue when our student numbers continue to rise, as they are. I think peer support is one of them. We have such demand. We've talked all night about speaking to students. So what is it that students want? They want peer support. They contact us all the time. Students are trying to start their own initiatives to set up peer support in their own schools and colleges, but they're hitting a brick wall because there's no funding. So I think we really need to capitalise on the fact that at the last court strategy day, the university wanted to pitch mental health support as a unique selling point of the university, which I think most current students would find quite laughable. So if they want to really push that as a unique selling point of the university, they need to put their money where their mouth is. So I think what they need to do is push for central funding for peer support, so that rather than it being only in the schools that have money, it goes out across the campus to every school and college and is much more effectively dealt with if people are trained centrally and we don't have to kind of fund multiple training days and things like that. So I think definitely pushing for that. I also think that we need to kind of focus on other student-led initiatives like the suicide prevention training to make sure that we are kind of giving students the tools to equip themselves with training to support themselves and their fellow students. Now, this doesn't take the onus of the university, which is why I think pushing for peer support as a training that comes from CAP, so that really is robust, is really kind of the ideal solution, because students are asking for it. It would make really good use of the money, and it would go a lot further than, say, funding one extra counsellor that maybe wouldn't have as wide an appeal.
Okay, so one more question. So a strategic objective for the university is to increase widening participation. And of course, the University of Glasgow, particularly across the Russell Group, does very well in this. But what steps would you take to ensure that there is ongoing support for widening participation students past entry?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
So what steps would you take to ensure that there is ongoing support for widening participation students past entry?
So at the moment, a lot of students that come in through widening participation schemes are welcome to the uni through the local student orientation. This involves students coming directly from school who partake in kind of a number of outreach programmes to they offer adjusted entry requirements to schools that are in kind of low-income areas. They also, this local student orientation also welcomes mature students that are coming in through access courses. So this is kind of the one day where the biggest majority of widening access students are here, and it's a great event. But I think after that, the university think they've kind of done their work for widening access students, and there's very little support beyond that. We have an adult learners network for the mature students that come in through widening access, and it's kind of used, but it's not really utilised in the way that it could be, because there's no kind of staff backing, and there's no real objective to push it and to encourage conversation on the forum. But then there's nothing for the kind of school leavers that come in through these widening access programmes. So I think, again, it's similar to what I suggested for the care experience young people that are coming to university. We need to be targeting support at the right times of year, and we need to be providing social and peer support. A lot of students that come here from through widening access, so those that are from backgrounds of from the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, 20, so that's the kind of 20% of most deprived postcodes in Scotland. Those students often suffer even more from imposter syndrome when they get here, because they feel that if they've come in through adjusted entry requirements, or they've come from a school where not a lot of people go to university, they really struggle with kind of whether or not they should be here. And I think for them, it's really important that they are connecting with other students that are in the same boat, and that they recognise that if they got into Glasgow, they deserve to be here. So I think setting up social groups, social forums, using the data that we have through widening participation and working with them to make sure that we're targeting the right students and at the right time, I think is really, really important, because social and peer support is kind of the #1 thing that's cited as a reason for dropping out by students in any kind of retention surveys that are done after students leave. And the kind of highest percentage of people that drop out tend to be people that come in through widening access schemes. So I think if they're citing lack of peer support and lack of social support, then we need to be listening to that and providing that peer support. One way to start it is the meet and greet team that we ran during Freshers Week that I developed this year. I want to see it go further, and I want to see more Freshers helpers being engaged with issues of widening participation and non-traditional students, and making sure that they make Freshers Week as accessible as possible for everyone, because that's really where you kind of make your social networks going forward. So yeah, pushing for specific social group support for these students, but also encouraging these students to kind of engage with Freshers Week to make friendships with the wider student population in their first few weeks.
Yeah, I do think that support is a really important thing, because coming to university is a really scary thing, and it's really scary for anybody, really. And as soon as students sort of move away from the traditional student idea, there's more and more pressure on them to be able to go through their time at university and enjoy, not only come out and get a degree, but also really enjoy spending time at university and joining clubs and joining societies and joining student bodies or sports teams. And it is, I think, maybe an idea. One thing that could be worked on is, to, like Lauren said, expand on the Freshers Week welfare team, and perhaps ensure that there are events throughout the year. There are not only moments throughout the year, but moments that allow for wider communication. We need to make sure that we talk with those students. We need to make sure that those students know that they're not just here and they're not just going about their university time without us supporting them. And I think that goes for a lot of widening participation issues as well. I know, for example, that through the Gender Action Plan that is being worked on at the minute, there's really a work towards getting more women in subjects like STEM, or more men in subjects like nursing, in which those gender are really lacking. There's really poor percentages, and the idea was really to not only make sure that for example, that more men go into nursing, but it's making sure that once they come in, they do feel like they can continue their study and come out with a degree and just stay within the university, which I think is really important.
Yeah, so mostly agree with what Lauren and Thais have said about especially targeted peer support throughout their studies and not just when they first come in. And then I think also a large part of feeling comfortable within the university is seeing people like within the SRC even that come from that background. So something that helped me as an international student, seeing other international students do well here, and Glasgow is such an engaging city and it's so easy to be international in. But that's something that definitely helps you when you're coming to university and it's scary and you're kind of the outsider. So targeted peer support throughout their studies, and then making sure that they're engaged as representatives, whether it's through unions or through societies.
Okay, so I think we'll take just one more from Twitter. So it's from Annie Liddell. And we have, just talking to students sounds easy, but as you said, so few even vote. So how do you intend to talk to students throughout the year?
I think so few students vote because the SRC tries to deal with things so internally so much of the time. Not everybody even from student societies go out and vote, and it actually really matters for us, especially who gets elected to the SRC. By increasing engagement through making, if societies don't even necessarily feel involved within the SRC's decision making, what's helping students who quite frankly, don't really care. So I think engaging the welfare and equality officers and class reps more to engage with the average student who doesn't necessarily, doesn't know where the SRC building is the first step. I think just really making it feel inclusive, because it can be really intimidating interacting with the SRC if you don't come in as a fresher, as so many people that are involved in the SRC do.
Yeah, engaging with students is something that's really difficult. I think one of the points that we can look at is, everybody loves that word, is cross-campus relations. But I do think it is important because, of course, whether the SRC, GUSA, GEU, the QMU, we all have different pools of students that are engaged in what we do and what the other student bodies do. And I think that going through there is quite important because, someone from another union may never, they might not even know who the SRC is or what the SRC does, which is really sad. But I do think that going through those channels can really help. Something else, for example, we have quite a lot of networks. We've got a parents network, a disabled student network, so many other networks that I think is a good point as well to engage with perhaps non-traditional students and those students that perhaps are not going to get involved with any of the student bodies. And then I do think that word of mouth is quite often the best way to go as well. So finding those few people who do somehow have influence over a really large group of people who can just pass the message on, because as the SRC, we're an organisation and we need to make sure that as an organisation we engage with the students, but I think that we are first and foremost students. And we know that students don't engage with organisations. We know that students don't care unless you give them a sweet or something. They're not going to want to listen to what you're saying. So I really think that we need to find ways and we need to talk with bodies and groups and societies that are successful in engaging with students and finding out what is it they're doing, what is the little sweets that they're giving out to make people listen to them.
So you're right, it's not easy to talk to students and everyone makes it sound like it should be really easy. I think the perception that the SRC doesn't try to talk to students is possibly it's more of a perception than a reality, because we do try really, really hard. We do contact clubs and societies and often we don't hear anything back. So I think what we need to do as an organisation is to look at why that is. So we now have a student engagement coordinator, a member of staff within the organisation, who is employed to help us tackle those issues. So I think first and foremost, we need to speak with him. I think also it's important to look at what demographics of students aren't getting involved in the SRC as well, to find out maybe what those issues are. This is one of the reasons for the creation of the meet and greet welfare team during Freshers Week, was to try and encourage more students to get involved with the SRC so that they could see themselves reflected within the SRC. This is something that's really important to me. The oldest student we have registered here at the uni is, in her 80s, and the oldest freshers helper this year was 30. So it doesn't really represent the actual student population. So for me, the things that have had the most positive outcome have been directly going to student groups that represent these kind of underrepresented groups. So for example, the local student orientation, you've got adult returners to education coming in, full of enthusiasm to come to uni. That's when we need to kind of catch mature students, is at that kind of early stage, and show them what the benefits are to being involved in the SRC and to make sure that they understand that it is an organisation that reflects them as well. The same can be said for kind of any demographic of underrepresented student. You need to go directly to those students and make sure that they know the SRC stands for them as much as it does for everyone else. And like Thais mentioned with the suites, we do need incentives to get people involved. So I think we really need to be pushing kind of the importance of things like the HEAR transcript, getting involved in the SRC as a freshers helper, as a class rep, or as a council member. It all goes on your transcript. So I think if we kind of better advertise what the benefits are, we also listen to students to find out why they're not getting involved, and deliberately target demographics that aren't getting involved are all ways to kind of improve engagement, because kind of mass emailing clubs and societies isn't the way forward.
Okay, any last questions? No? Okay, well thank you very much to all candidates. Thank you. Okay, so this is a lot quicker than last night. So, on to our last position for this evening, and our many, many candidates. We'll be hearing from our presidential candidate for next year. Please give a warm welcome to Kate Powell.
Exciting. Hello. This time last year, I was running for VP Ed, and I was so nervous, like my hand was shaking so much. And I had a lot of things in my manifesto that I believe were realistic, and I have made progress on them. Things like Wednesday afternoons, lecture recording, accessibility of feedback, and giving class reps a platform to speak on. I have achieved these things, and I want to do more as president. So, When I was thinking about writing my manifesto, I didn't really want to kind of like burn the beige or go a bit wild and go really radical. I didn't want to have a standard presidential manifesto that just said like accommodation, support, SRC. But when it comes down to it, the reason these issues keep coming up over and over again is because they are the main issues that affect students. They are the problems that need to be addressed. Accommodation needs to be addressed. Teaching spaces, study spaces, these things need to be addressed. And I'm going to make realistic promises and take pragmatic approach to make sure that we make change and we have short-term and long-term progress with these things. So I think that at a national level, we need to make sure that Glasgow is really strong in its stance on the teaching excellence framework. St Andrews have joined the framework, Aberdeen have joined the framework. We need to make sure that we remain strong on this. Edinburgh haven't, so we probably if they do, we might copy them. But we've got to make sure that we remain really strong on this. We also need to make sure that we're offering much more, not even just Glasgow University, but other universities are offering greater English language support for international students. There's also problems to do with West End accommodation that I really want to see addressed. There was a private tenancies bill in 2015, which not many people know about, but it means that if we lobby the local council, they will lobby Scottish ministers to put a rent it's called a rent pressure zone on the West End, which means that landlords can only increase rent every 12 months. We need the attention to be drawn to the fact that the West End is significantly overpriced, not even just for students, but for general people who want to live in the West End. This is a problem and it really needs to be addressed. On a kind of university level, I think that we need to address lecture recording. Like people yesterday who were running for school reps were talking about lecture recording as if it's a replacement for teaching, saying that we need video link lectures. We don't. Lecture recording is intended as a support mechanism. It's not to replace teaching at all. It's intended for those who can't attend lectures because of various reasons, or who kind of want to go back and reflect and study at home, or want to look at the lectures in their own time. That is what it's intended for, and that is the message that we need staff to have and students to have. And the message that I've kind of been pushing throughout my time as VP, and I want to continue to work with the Vice President of Education next year, I'll give them a little bit of leeway, I'll just take over the job. I will work with them on developing what we currently do with the lecture recording policy. We also need to address our own accommodation, so we need to address our halls, which are,
Thank you very much, Kate.
Oh, no way, I've run out. Oh, I timed it before, I was so good at this. I know what I'm doing.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you.
Please vote for me.
Okay. I said I was going to be short. So, can we please have questions from the audience? Okay, we'll start off with Chris.
Fees. Obviously, there was the instance at the start of the year where there was the whole lack of consultation, and there was the letter released. First of all, what would you envisage would be your approach should a similar situation happen again? Say when it goes to court in May.
To rest of UK fees.
Yeah, and you get all the indications that it's not going to go to 4 years, and it does, kind of quite backhandedly, like it almost did before. And also, a lot of these decisions on fees feel like they're almost beyond the remit of the university, in the sense it's almost like national trends. So as your job as trying to represent students' desires and demands on issues like that, when they're so externally influenced, how would you foresee your approach to that?
Yeah, okay, so obviously, we were annoyed when we weren't consulted first time, and it was actually me who brought it up with the principal first. Just throw that out there, sorry. But we met with Rachel Sanderson, who's a head of marketing recruitment at International Office, and we spoke with her and said that we need to have this paper. So every year, Mario will do a paper on fees to senior management group, and they are going to do that they're going to give it to us in about March, and it will probably go in April, ready for May. And they say that there is no data to suggest that there is going to be a move towards 4 years. Obviously, that's not necessarily, that's not certain, and I completely agree with you that we need to be very kind of forward with our approach to that. So I think that we need to continue doing what we're doing and make sure that we're following up, get that paper before SMG do, put our views on it, make sure it's it's suitable, and have regular kind of dialogue with the SMG and Mario to make sure that we're in the loop. We also need to use the platform that we have. Like, we're not NUS. We don't kind of consult with Scottish Government on a regular basis in the same way that they do. We need to make sure we're kind of on the same platform and up to date with things. I think in the kind of long-term, grand scale of things, like Glasgow, when things like divestment, so Glasgow was a really kind of forward-thinking university in the fact that they divested from fossil fuels, and it was the first university, I think, in the, was it the EU who did it? Yeah, and that was because of the views and the kind of campaign, led by students. We need to make sure that senior management know that this is something that we value. We value free and, low fees for rest of UK students, comparatively. We value that as something that our students really want to hold on to. And I think that once staff know what our values are and we really push them and we instill these values into the university, then we're doing a lot of what we can do and pushing for it.
Okay. Other questions from the audience? I'll go over here.
So I'd like to ask a question about the rector.
Mm-hmm.
So in view of our current rector not visiting us for 3 years, and also that they had to reopen the nominations because there were no candidates this year, do you think we'd be better off if we didn't elect a rector and the SRC took over the student representation duties that the rector has? Or do you still think that it's a valuable role for the students?
Sorry, what was the last bit of the question?
Do you think it's still worth having a rector for the students?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, obviously, I think we should have a rector. I think it's a really, they are the kind of chair of court. So they sit at a kind of higher level in a sense to us as, having 2 student representatives on court. A third voice is so important to us. As student representatives, we will continue to push for representation on every committee, no matter what that be. Obviously, we had Edward Snowden, who did absolutely nothing for us, apart from, turn up on Skype at the freshers' address when that was still poor Wi-Fi. But if we have an active, candidate who knows what the interests of students are, then it is really valuable for us. Because we've seen an elective rector, I think our experiences of rector are kind of a bit kind of squiff. We don't necessarily, we don't value the rector in the same way, and I think that that's shown by the fact that we didn't have any candidates. We've had 5 candidates put forward for this rector elections, and I hope that, most of them aren't transphobic and that we've got some really good candidates. And it'd be really, really good to work with them, actually.
Okay, other questions from the audience? Go back to Chris.
I've got 2, but I'll keep them quick. I think in your manifesto and in your interview, you talked about engagement with the local community.
Yeah.
Kind of branching out a bit more into the beyond the campus. What are the main ways you think you'll do that? And also, given that there's 27,000 students at this university, all different backgrounds, how will you, as one person, represent all those different people?
Oh, God. Obviously, representing 27,000 students is always going to be a bit difficult. But I think we all have, as students, united aims. And we all kind of want the same thing. We want to have a good student experience and also hope that everyone else would have a good student experience. I think that a lot of even our own MSP, Sandra White, I'd go as far as saying that she doesn't necessarily think that students are good for the local area. And I think that, like we took part in a litter pick, a few weeks ago. And that sort of thing where we are visible and as students and saying, we care about the West End, and also making sure that, recently, another MSP stood up for students and kind of spoke out about the fact that they kind of get, thrown in with a bad bunch and students are ruining the West End, and he criticised that. We need to make sure that we are thanking these people and saying, we stand with you, and using the kind of the support that we have, and also getting them to use their connections to push the fact that, students can be really great for the West End and the local community. We just need to make sure that we are, we're kind of working
considering there's going to be a lot of developments with the new campus and with Byers Road, we need to make sure that this is seen as a positive thing for the West End, and I think that's slightly up to us and slightly up to the university, but it's also up to us to kind of move the university's direction to the side of the students. What's your second one?
There were two.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the audience? Go to Kathy.
Sorry, slightly inaudible question, but I didn't see you really address it in your manifesto. So obviously Brexit's happening.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know what's going on in Scotland. This affects students in Glasgow University in a plethora of ways, like, just obviously EU students, then there's Erasmus, then there's, of course, science grants, etc., things like that. I was just wondering if you have any idea, what kind of strategy, if you have any strategy, how you would work with the university, with government, do you have any kind of plan in place or kind of concept of the plan?
Yeah, well, one thing that we haven't done yet, which I really think that we should do, is we should have a statement on what we want to prioritise for EU students after Brexit. So we haven't said anything, we haven't released a statement on the fact that, we've said, the SRC will support you, the SRC will really, put the interests of the EU students at heart, but we've not said things like, we will want to make sure that Erasmus is available for most students. We want to make sure that fees are kind of, we'd love to see none, but let's think realistically. We'd love to, I think that it'd be really good for us to make statements on these things and show the EU community what we think, and also show the university that these are the things that we want to prioritise. Obviously, at the moment, it is difficult because so many people, we meet with the principal and he says, what are students saying to you about, EU? And there is nothing. We've got no information to give, but I think letting EU students know what we want to prioritise and how much we value them is something that we need to be proactive in doing.
Okay, any other questions from the audience?
10 out of 10, Annie.
No? Okay. Sorry, do you have one? No, I thought you did. Okay. Okay, we'll take one from Twitter then. So we have one from Fergus Taylor. So what's the worst thing you did?
You're there, you can ask me.
Sorry?
What's the worst thing?
You did as VP Ed, and how did you learn from it? Sorry?
I knew I'd be asked this. I don't think I've done anything really bad, to be honest. I think there are obviously things that I wish I'd maybe gone about in a different way. I think so we do periodic subject reviews, so every 6 years we do the university leads a review of each subject, and I don't think that I tried enough to engage with students that weren't class reps, that weren't engaged in the subject, that weren't kind of, didn't know all the lectures. I think it would have been important to get a kind of general view of the experience in order to evaluate the process better. I think that I could have publicised these elections a bit better, to be honest. We've got a lot of filled academic representative positions, more so than we have for years, but a lot of them are unopposed. I wish I'd have publicised that better. I wish I'd have planned for the Education and Technology Conference a bit better, but, Learning Teaching Centre going on a restructure, can't have it all. But those are the things that I wish I'd done better. Is that okay? What could I have done better, Fergus?
Not forgot his birthday.
Huh?
What
did she say? What did you say?
You forgot his birthday.
Is it your birthday? No. Oh, yeah, I did. Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry. I bought him a glass of wine yesterday, so don't know why he's complaining.
Okay. Not quite yet, Jess. So I've got a couple of questions. So again, as a strategic aim within the SRC strategy, we look to increase, obviously, engagement with our international community. Could you give a rough percentile of the satisfaction rating within the ISB that the SRC aims to have?
75%. Is it 75%?
95.
Oh! No, sorry.
In addition to that, increasing aspect of the SRC President's role over the last few years has been balancing their day-to-day duties with the increasing demand around the campus development. We're now going into a restructure in the university around governance of the campus development, where project boards are being changed to delivery boards that will take up far more time of those who sit in these boards. So as we go through into this next phase of the development and it becomes an increasing demand in your time, how would you look to address this to ensure you can still carry out your other day-to-day duties?
So I think the SRC President has too much power and that we should take some of the committees off the President to give the President more time. Things like Graduations Committee is completely unnecessary for the President to sit on. Like the colour of robes does not necessarily matter, to be honest. Regarding the campus development, I think that, so I recently took off the Learning and Teaching Hub Project Development Board, which is quite sad about, but because they're reducing the size of these boards to delivery boards. And along with that comes student representation, which is fantastic. But I think that if we have one student representative on a board, and no matter how hard we push, that's what we're going to have. We should have work streams set up so that, you know, we have a group who we consult with. For example, I was on the College of Arts Project Development Board and still am. I don't have a group to go back to and discuss these things. We have a campus development committee who look at the general campus, but these projects are running so separately and are running in different times and, you know, and have very different plans and people leading on them. I think that we need to streamline the information that we're giving to students on the campus development and make it more specific to each project. So setting up work streams specific to each development, I think, would be something I'm interested in doing.
Okay. And in addition to that, what area, because again, I've said this to all candidates this evening, a year is a very finite amount of time. What area would you like to see the SRC as an organisation improve most on over the next year?
I think that we could tell people what we do. We're always kind of like, oh, go to the SRC website, or like, join the SRC, become a freshers helper, but we don't really tell people what we do. We should, you know, we need to let them know of the services that we have. Like, you would not know half of the things that we do as an organisation, or even our sabbatical officers do, or our advice team do, because we don't tell people. We expect people to search out and find these things, and I think that we can do a lot to advertise ourselves and tell people, you know, we're not just here during times of crisis. We can, you know, it's the fact that a lot of clubs and societies don't necessarily apply for grants or loans, or they don't collect it. I think we need to advertise the services that we offer to students and societies and different groups of people.
Okay, and just following on from that point, so questions coming from Twitter. So Kate, specifically, how will you raise SRC awareness on campus? Is social media a useful tool in this? Not always, apparently.
Well, I feel like it is quite a good tool. I think we need to look at the communications channels that we're using. Obviously, the university is looking at how they review their communications, and they're looking at reviewing the student portal, which is definitely not what we refer to as student portal, My Campus, which is... So if the university are looking at their student communications, we need to make sure that we are looking at ours and making sure the two are running in parallel and try and get in on the university communications, but also remain independent. So I think we can use... What is happening? I think that we should use social media, but I also think there's a lot of things that we can do, like having our hoodies and being available on campus, having a presence in the library, and having a presence in, you know, student-facing buildings, because this isn't one.
Okay. And what area do you think the university could improve most on over the next year? And how would you see yourself having input into this?
Accepting that not every student learns through lectures, seminars, and the same standard of teaching and the same IT systems that we've used for years. Not every student learns in that way, and not every student is going to learn in that way. Not every student is going to study, you know, in their lecture breaks, you know, from 9 to 5. I think the university needs to be more progressive in the way that they think students learn.
Okay. And one last question. So a famous one for SRC Hustings, although I don't think it was asked from the audience this year, but I'm going to ask it.
You're going to ask which service I'd cut?
Yeah, so if you could cut one SRC service, what would it be and why? An existing service currently.
It's really difficult. Oh, God. I was thinking about this before. I keep changing my mind. I really don't know. I like all of them. I wish we could have more services. I don't know. Okay. Oh no. I'm just not going to answer that question because I don't think one service should be prioritised over another, considering they're all services that are used by students and are important. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you. So, that concludes the evening. I want to say again a huge thank you to everyone that's attended this evening. I would also like to extend a huge thank you to Gust, who have been live streaming last night and tonight. Can we all give them a round of applause? And have given viewers at home the opportunity to hear from election candidates. These are very important roles. We are currently in times of great change within the university and obviously at WITH, and it's important we have strong student voices to represent us all. No, Fergus. So, in addition to that, I would obviously like to say that election polling opens at 9 a.m. tomorrow and will close at 5 p.m. on Thursday. Remember, candidates that you've heard from this evening are all full-time paid sabbatical officers that will be representing you up to the highest levels next year. But also, we did have our hustings last night. For anyone who couldn't make that, please check out the manifestos of other council representative candidates that will be running in the upcoming elections. The outcome of the elections will be here at 6 p.m. on Thursday. So again, where candidates that have been successful in their campaigns will be announced, and you'll see those that will be representing you next year. Please also don't forget that for campaigners and other members of the student body that have been here over the last few days or watching from home, that there are still a number of positions available for SRC Council which you can put yourself forward for in the upcoming October elections. And please remember to check out our website to look at other areas that you can get involved with as a student. I just want to say again a huge thank you to everyone. I've quite enjoyed just watching from the sides this year. So thank you very much for listening to candidates, and best of luck to everyone running. Thank you.